Morning everyone, so in this video I will go over my Gauntlet Orc list, the Gauntlet Finals Orc list. And I'll just throw my opinions out there on what I liked, what I didn't like, what I think. Um, yeah, I'm not going to go, deep into any of the games I played. I'll tell you what happened in the Gauntlet. But it's more about, how I felt about the list and everything like that. So this is my list. Just take a look at it. You can find it anywhere. So Gauntlet Finals is 4 rounds. I played against a Scourge, Dark Elves, or Dread Elves, and then Beastmen. So I got I think like a 14 versus the first Scourge, and then I beat the Dark Elves 18. I got a 2 versus the Beastmen, and I got 11 versus the other Scourge. Typically, my role on the team was to I think we led with Thomas every time. Maybe the Warriors once. I forget exactly. Thomas. I think we led with Thomas most of the time. And so I was getting stuck with whatever was over there. So I usually was playing pretty safe, I'd say. I don't think I ever had to go really aggressive. No, looking back, I pretty much was safe. And I had some really, I'll say, more on the lucky side games when I beat the Dark Elves. And not that I was unlucky versus the Beastmen, but that game could have definitely turned for a big win for me with a couple combats. Once we got kind of stuck in, there's kind of like no going back, right? So on paper, that matchup is probably even. But with the idea that if one of us kind of goes in for it, it can just get kind of messy. But anyway, I had a lot of fun playing the list. It's very, as I said in many videos, it's a lot different playing orcs than warriors. A lot of things to think about, especially like leadership and stuff like that. So we'll go through the pieces of my list of what I liked, what I didn't like, maybe what potential changes, or how something has kind of a downstream effect on the rest of the list. So, we could talk about the Orc General first. So, as a piece, I really like the Omen of Apocalypse Orcs. Great cowboy. I do run the Pharaoh one. Battle Focus has been nice, but just having some Lord that, he's 3-up save, toughness 6, 5-up ward. He's killable, but he's not unkillable. 500 points. He has 4 plus D3 attack, so he's usually looking at 6 strength, 7 minimum, 8 on the charge, or 8 on the first round of combat. And he can easily be 7 strength, 8 like rounds 2 and 3. So it's very scary to play against him. I really liked him. Leadership 9, I'm starting to feel like is a must for orcs. There's just too many things, whether it's fear on your spiders, whether it's, frenzy checks, panic checks, whatever. Just having Leadership 9 is really nice. Now, the downside to him is he sometimes runs off, and so you lose your leadership bubble, and it can be pretty important for some of your units. And I guess that's the biggest downside. And you need a unit for him to hide in. So in this particular case, I run 10 Feral Ed Bashers, and we'll talk about whether I like that unit or not later on. But he kind of needs something to hide in. I know you can not. In the first Gauntlet series, I had a similar list of this, but I didn't take any boar boys. I had giants and stuff. It was actually fairly different, but the style of the cowboys was the same. And the idea was, if you face shooting, you just put him behind this thing. But I don't love that. Maybe it's just the style that I play, but it feels kind of bad to have him sitting back here. He's already 5 inches behind the battle, and then when you move him up, I guess you can. And this thing isn't as fast as him, and then I guess you can do stuff like that. But nonetheless, I'm not a huge fan of that. I'd rather have a unit for him to go in. But as far as orcs go, Leadership 9 is great. He's a great cowboy. He brings something a little different. I think there are other good weapons in orcs, and I'm not going to discount them. And I haven't played enough orc games with different things to kind of make this assumption, or I can make some assumptions. But just having somebody that's strength is 7 to 8 with consistent amount of attacks. I don't count the crush attack from the idol as that. Is really nice. He's just a fast cowboy that has a lot of high strength attacks and can take a lot of things. And it's just really nice to have that. Yes, there's a lot of strength 5 in this army with chariots and with Nashers and all these and fanatics, but there isn't as much strength 7, 8 consistent giants, sure, but it's just not the same as a cowboy. So I really like the Omen Apocalypse Cowboy. Definitely one of my favorite models I've played with. But there are some downsides being frenzy, and he's your general, so you don't want him to die, but you kind of need his leadership in some places, which is definitely something you have to take into account when you construct lists. So I really liked him. We'll just do the mage next. So I ran a single level 4 with heirloom, and that was all my magic. I didn't have any extra channels. I didn't have any. I had 5 spells, and usually would always be this, and then I'd pick 5 or 6. Or not this, 2. Fuck 3. And I would just pick 5 or 6 depending if it was did I need to hit some single models, or was I worried they might sit back and I wanted to drop a comment on them. I don't think I dropped that many comments this tournament. That being said, the magic is what it is. You're paying 415 points for it. 415 points for it. Yeah, you're paying 415. You're getting 5 spells. Very good. It's kind of like orcs or ogres in the sense that you have enough single models to kind of use. The breath weapon effectively, though, ogres do a little better early because the dogs and the hunters are a little bit faster with the vanguards and can stand in front of things. It did feel like I had a little bit of range issues if I didn't get first turn because I was kind of backed up behind my own army with my mage. And probably I should have done a little bit better job of putting my mage in the big goblins early on and then moving him out as needed. That being said, as far as the magic phase goes, it's very efficient. I think there's arguments to be said to put in more magic, and I guess I like the idea, and I'm not saying I'm not going to do it. In fact, I wrote a new list that had a second mage in it, where you took heirloom away and you put a adept with maybe Book of Arcane Mastery, and then you put Skull Fetish on your mage. So now you're looking at, I had 1 channel, 5 spells. You're looking at 2 channels plus a lot of channels from combats, especially if you have cowboys, or if you add in chariots, like boar chariots. And then you get another lore with +2 to cast, so a little more options. But we'll see how that progresses. I like it, but sometimes it feels bad for me to add more magic because you're essentially taking out 1 cowboy for more magic. And I guess in my head, if I'm using all my magic dice, I'm casting fairly good spells most rounds, then another cast, and like I said, when I play against 2 masters, I feel like it's super good. When I have to buy 2 masters, I feel super bad about it. But it's that idea that, I feel like I'm getting 90% out of my magic phase, 85%. Why would I spend another 400 points to get another 15% when I can buy something that just does something completely different? That's how I kind of view magic sometimes. I don't think it's always the best way, but I think it's a reasonable way. I don't think there's anything wrong with this magic phase for 400 points. You might as well buy it and use it. I take a Goblin BSB with the Vanguard Crown of Cavern King for 18-inch BSB, which is, it's super important for how I play and how this army plays. I needed that BSB, and there were some people that watched my games, but if you would have had a player cam and you could watch me play, I'm always positioning this unit to be, where can the BSB be? What is this bubble of 18 inches from him if you think he's here, right? Here's the bubble where he can be. Where am I going to need leadership? Where do I might have to just sacrifice and say, well, they're not going to get their leadership this turn. Lots of stuff like that. So I love the item on him. Of course, he can Vanguard. He has a choice to Vanguard the big unit, and he can Vanguard both spiders. So, I will say I went first one of my games, and it was versus one of the Scourge lists. And it did matter to a sense that he had to play a little more defensive with his deployment so that I didn't Vanguard in front of him. But at the same time, I think there's a lot better matches where I can Vanguard and kind of abuse that. It was flags and a bunch of single models that beat my single models. So the Vanguarding up my spiders isn't exactly that strong. But, I've realized that you're not always going to get first turn. It sounds really cool to put all your shit in here and then, Vanguard it up. And that's very nice to have. But the main point of buying that item is for the 18-inch BSB. I'd say it's huge for him. And, of course, there are turns where you can still Vanguard. You can do things like, put him by himself over here, and then he can Vanguard off and he can walk back into his units. You don't even need to be in the Goblin unit to do it. So I still like the Vanguard item, and it still keeps possibilities open. Then we have this Spider King. If you want to see the list, I like using the models just because. So this is the 1-up rerollable save Hero's Heart one. So, 5 strength, 5 attacks, poison, 1-up rerollable save, basalt. Very, very strong model. I really liked him. Puts it for 345. He puts out a lot of damage, I'd say. And then we get to the second Spider, and he works well with the Vanguard. Then you get to the second Spider King, who's like 315 points, and I didn't love this build that much. Now remember, I'm out of hero points. I'm maxed, 100% maxed. So I couldn't even have the shield on this guy, which would have been really big. The problem is, well, I played 2 demons, so Ghostly Guard is useless. But it also kind of makes him shitty versus like most magic missiles, because he only has a 3-up save versus magic missiles. He could have a 2-up if I got that shield in, but even then, like, anything with AP 1 or 2, like here, like Hand of Heaven or something, it's just so potential for him to take wounds and just kind of suck early that I don't know. He would be a question mark for me to drop. I think he's not an auto include, especially with the build that I went. That's a little bit more like the cheap build because I put points into the other things like the Crown of the Cavern King and stuff like that. I could see dropping him and running, because this list, it doesn't have to be full aggro. You can kind of sit back and play your game. So he's the one thing in the list I wasn't too happy with. I would almost say dropping some of his offensive power, like he has troll off. I would almost go like Alchemist Alloy and maybe even Hand Weapon Shield or Lance, or go Shield Breaker and just have 4 attacks and just say whatever. I'm gonna have 4 attacks and I have poison. Who cares from offensive 3? Poison is my main thing anyway. And just, it's cheaper that way. It would be 15 points. I mean, in a shield, so that's 20 points minus. You're 15 points cheaper. You save 15 points, you get a 1-up save all the time. And you lose, all you lose is 1 attack and some offense. You lose 3 offense and 1 attack, but you get a better save all the time. And I think there's more use in that because you have the auto strength 5, you have the spider. You're not there to go kill every hero. You're there to be like annoying. So I didn't like the Ghostly Guard build. I thought it was too susceptible to magic missiles, and he does want to be on his own, and it just felt weird. So those are my heroes. Like them. I didn't like this hero that much, but he did his job. So then we can come to Orc Core. So I ran 29 orcs, 45 goblins with 3 fanatics relentless, and then I ran this unit with the standard discipline and 20 force goblins. So one thing I'm trying to get fixed on Lauren's or on Universal Battle is that this unit is, the gaps are too big for skirmishers. So they're supposed to be 12.5 inches, 12.5 millimeters, sorry, which is a half an inch. And so if you look at this, right, there's 4 gaps, so 4 gaps should be 50 millimeters. So that means this whole frontage should be 150 millimeters, which is the length of these chariots. And you can tell it's like half a base too big. So everything, all the gaps are 2.5 millimeters too much. So it's 10 millimeters total, and it doesn't sound like a lot. But when you have a unit this big, and sometimes I go like 8 wide with it, it takes up a little bit more room than it should, like half an inch. So if you were to squeeze this unit down by like half an inch, there are a little bit more gaps you can fit in, a little bit less footprint to worry about. So that is something I want fixed, but I digress. This unit was really great. I really liked having it. The way I play, and I talked about that 18-inch BSB bubble and how focused you have to be on it and how important it is to make sure you can be within 18 inches of everything and having the perfect spot. And so if you watch me play, there's a lot of times I'm moving the unit around, turning it here, picking which model is best for the BSB to be. And you still have 8 inches of any move, as opposed to like being a 20-man goblin unit that's ranked. So I lose scoring. Essentially, all I lose is scoring. Because if you assume the 20-man unit has to have a musician, the points I pay to make these skirmish is the same points as a musician. But you have a lot less lateral movement with the musician unit, because this can go 8 inches to the side, right? If your BSB's here, you can go 8 inches this way. While you don't really have that option in a ranked unit because you're bound by like Swift Reforms, and especially if your mage is in it, like there's a being able to turn the right way, like here, right? I'll give you a great example. If I want to magic missile this unit or this cav unit over here, Um, but I need my BSB to be within 18 of this unit over here. With a ranked unit, I'd have to basically turn here and back up 2 inches or so, right? With my, and let's just say, oh no, I'm not in range. But if the BSB was here, I could move the unit 8 inches this way, face to the left, assume that the move is legal, and still be within 18 here. So the movement options of this unit has been pretty great. And I talked about before is the scoring of the ranked unit really that good, right? You're never going to get across the board and break through. You might get to the center of the board and hold the center. Flags, it's not helpful to have it in a ranked unit. Spoils, it's very rarely going to make it to the middle because of the way it plays. Maybe secure target, you can get it near one. It's like half a scoring unit. It's not even like a full scoring. I think the movement options of this is better, I'd say. This big ass goblin unit, it's expensive. It's 525 points. I don't have a champ. And there's some cool things you can do with fanatics. I feel like I still have to see the opportunities a little better on the board. And I also need to use the fact that it is a 9 rank unit more often, better. And what I mean by that is, it's not just a fanatic delivery system and die. You can't do that for 500 points. 3 fanatics are not worth 500 points. You need to use it for what it is. It's a giant steadfast unit that has parry and has 9. It's 45 models, so it's very hard to get through if you can keep the general and BSB in range. Hard to break early. It also provides ranks for your boars and your spiders to break steadfast and break people. In my game versus the Beastman, which I actually lost, this unit charged with an idol at 36 bestigors, and I was just like, all right, I just need the 3 ranks, the banner, and they're going to take some wounds. I think I lost 7, but the idol with stomps and impact hits and stuff killed enough to break the unit and broke open part of the game. And if the other side didn't go poorly this one turn, they would have smashed through. So I think there's in my head, you want to do this cool fanatic move where you like sack the unit and somebody lands on a fanatic, but it's a balance of both, in my opinion. And it's one of the units that needs general's leadership the most. So that'll be a theme we talk about of what actually needs the general's leadership. Also, this unit stands as discipline, so my BSB and my mage go in it, and I don't need to worry about panic checks, which is huge in my opinion. You don't have to worry about the general being there. You don't have, especially the general like leadership reigns, because my BSB is 18, my general's 12. They don't have to connect with each other, right? You don't need to keep them within. If they needed the general's leadership, you're kind of limiting the BSB range in a weird way, and just being able to not care about checks for a unit that's worth like 1,200 points or something. Yeah, about maybe it's like 1,100 points. And then I took 29 Savage Orcs with a Mammoth Stabber and no banner. This unit was disappointing, in my opinion. And part of it is my using it, and part of it is it just didn't feel that great. It's not that big. I failed a couple frenzy checks. What did it do in all my games? It just sucked. It was a bunker in one of my games that didn't do anything. It was something that just died early in another game versus Dark Elves. That's not their fault so much as they can only do so much. It was a bunker that had potential in the Orc. Yeah, it could have won me the game in the Beastman game. It wasn't their fault. And then I failed Frenzy in the last game, and it was a non-rerollable Frenzy, but it's failable, and it just like put me in a horrible position, especially given it was flagged. So basically lost me in the scenario because of it. It's a fine unit. I don't have any characters that go in it. I don't make it that much stronger. My magic doesn't support it amazingly. Obviously, reroll to hit is good and smite is good, but it doesn't use the breath very well. So like 2 of my buffs are good versus it, and they're not even like, I don't know. I think +1 strength and toughness is probably better. I guess it doesn't matter that much. I don't know. It was just one of those units that it's core, it's 400 points, sure, it's fine, it's scoring, I need it. I'm not like in love with it. I'm curious if the update helps normal orcs, and if normal orcs are even a good option, because in a way, you're like, oh, they're immune to psych or fearless. You don't need your general's leadership that much, but you need your general's leadership because of the frenzy anyway. You can be in some really bad positions if you don't, because they don't beat a lot. Like, a lot of things can walk in front of them and get charged, and like you'll lose or you'll fail the frenzy and you'll have to charge. And if they fail the charge, they can't flee. Like, you can't. Like, it'd be kind of nice if they were normal orcs, to a sense that I could just flee them and say, all right, if they die, they die. I would have fled them in the other game, and if they die, they die. That's fine, but I wouldn't have given the overruns and stuff. So there is something there where I'm curious if the update helps the core of at all. I could see this. I'm running a list where this is another goblin unit with 2 fanatics, and just accepting that I'm not going to get my fighting out of the core, and I'm going to get the fanatics plus some ranks out of it and scoring. But then the scoring becomes kind of weak. That's an issue with the army. And then it's 2 units that need the leadership of the general. I mean, technically, they both need it now, as I just talked about the frenzy. But assuming you support the orcs well, and maybe like you can put them on the flank, and then maybe they beat the units that are going to frenzy bait them, you don't need the general's leadership, and they are autonomous in their own way. Like, you can't put 30 goblins on the flank and then not, and be like, okay, I'm going to fail my 5 leadership. At least these guys, if you fail frenzy, you're at least charging and potentially killing things. So we'll see how that plays out in the future. I can't complain too much about the big unit. I don't have like a good, like, this is a little bit over core points because of the savages. I don't know. Maybe if nets get buffed, I'd put in nets. They're just very expensive, but like nets with 45 goblins, like, you're going to be steadfast even longer. It's going to combo well with the other units because they're -1 strength on the enemy, and you being -1 strength doesn't really matter if you happen not to get it. So, perhaps that's something in the future that I change. So we'll see if the update brings anything. And also the whole thing about potentially command going to 10 points, which we heard rumors about. My core would instantly go down 60 points. I'm actually over core, so I'd probably be at min core at that point, which is good. But that 60 points can be spent elsewhere in this particular list if I wanted. So, chaff is chaff. Could I use a second unit potentially? But I felt like you can always use more units if you want to be defensive, but it's kind of hard to squeeze it in this list, I'd say. But definitely an option. Idols, I'm going to come back to these 2 units because these are probably the biggest focus of negativity. Idols were good. I liked them. Like, it's hard not to like idols. They're 365. They're pretty cheap. I did face Div Magic twice, Div Masters, but between a series of pretty bad rolls, but also just like, they're not like you're losing a vermin demon, right? They're 6 wounds. They have a 4-up save, which is about as good as you're gonna get versus a lot of div stuff, right? Well, not as good as you're gonna get, but on the better side, right? Better than a scourge versus div. Right? Let me just think that math real quick. A scourge getting hit by an unerring strike is 6-up, 5-up rerolled. 5-up rerolled is 1/9, so you have 8 ninths, 5 6. 40, 63 versus 2/3. Close enough. I think it's actually still better. I think a 4-up save is better than a 5-up save in Divined 5. Anyway, like, even if Div goes off and just, if they roll the 6 on the big Faith Judgment, you take 3 wounds and you're 300. It's not the end all be all if your idols take some wounds. It happens. They're cheap. They're 365. So I really liked them. I like that, unlike giants, like, they're not that susceptible to bolt throwers. There's a lot of little things that, like, they're not bad versus fireballs. There's a lot of magic that doesn't fuck with them. So they're just a little bit heftier. And there's something about adding targets to your army. I had giants in my last list, and they were very easy targets for pyro magic or our repeater bolt throwers and all this stuff, and I don't know, it's just different. So we'll talk about the board boys first. Ed Bashers. So I did not like this unit, and there's several reasons for it, and there's not as many fixes as I like. But we'll talk about, and this is kind of the only reason that I would even consider right now dropping the Omen of Apocalypse guy is this unit disappoints me. So here's my like theory about it, and here's how the inner workings of why. First off, it's a 4-up save unit with a 6-up ward, where 6-up ward could be basically, it's garbage. It does nothing. So the first change I would make is, one, they die too fast. Two, just make them feral, the non-ones, the mounted Ed Bashers, the Orc ones, because they have a 2-up save, which is way better versus all the shooting shit that just shoots them. And then people say, oh, well, now they're not immune to Psych then. Okay, that's fine, because it's a rerollable 9 if they're with my General. Rerollable 8 otherwise. They're usually around my BSB. Just accept it. Like, I'd rather... It's fine. Because the less of them are going to die, too, right? You still have to kill a decent number to cause panic checks. 2, when my General's not there, they're not frenzied, which is great, because being frenzy sucks. Like, when my General's in there, when my General's in there and they frenzy something, it's better because they have a way better save in combat. So if my General can at least take the hits, if I was to charge into like a unit of, I don't know, strength 2, strength 3, strength 4 models, whatever, the 3-up save is going to get me through a lot of it. And then I'm going to put some attacks back, and my Lord's going to kill some stuff. As opposed to just instantly dying, like all the Ferals do. So I'm frenzy anyway if my Lord's in there. If my Lord's not in there, because he charges out a lot, now I'm not frenzy, and I don't have to worry about taking risks. Because a lot of times the problem is my Ferals are like in the middle of my army because I need my General's leadership, which we can talk about. Is there a way to fix this, in a different way? And so I like 10 Ferals in like the context of, if you give me 10 Feral Ed Bashers, put them on the flank, run at some stuff, cause a lot of attacks, sure. Give them paired weapons instead of shields, and just go kill some stuff. I'm down for it. 300 points, does a lot of damage, scoring, sure. But because the unit needs to house my General in most matchups, just to save him from magic missiles and cannons and bolt throwers, because I have to do that, they have to be more centralized, and being like a frenzy cav unit that isn't that strong if the General leaves in the middle of your army, I just kept wanting to not fail frenzy, because you don't want to charge off in the middle of like somebody's Death Star in the middle and cause like a reform or a free overrun. So the fact that they have to be more centralized due to needing the leadership and protecting my General, I think it's just better if they were the non-frenzy ones and just accept. So now I'm saying I accept that panic's going to potentially happen, but then I gain not being frenzy when the Lord's not there, but I also gain just protection. 2-up save is way better than 4-up, 6-up. And especially versus like light shooting, like just strength 4 shooting, like people just kept shooting it, and I was like, oh my god, I'd lose so many. Or magic missile would just bomb them, and I'd be like, oh shit, this is bad. I would not take this unit probably if I didn't have. Well, that's the funny thing, right? If you have the Omen guy, you kind of need this unit to protect him. If you don't have the Omen guy, this unit becomes better because you can kind of leave it on the flank and be a little bit more judicious with it. And if it's a secure target, it can be on the flank and kind of be out there. And if you frenzy and die, it's probably not killing you, and you have more options. So it's like this unit, he makes it worse to take it. It feels worse to take it because of him. But maybe... And in some of it, maybe I should explore, my options a little more, where maybe he can kind of go. He doesn't have to be in the center of my army. This doesn't need his leadership. I mean, this is fearless with 8. This is fearless with 8. These guys are 8. As long as the BSB is way more important to half my army than his leadership, right? These guys don't panic. So really, the main things that need his leadership are these units here in front, and he doesn't have to be like, I kept doing like this, right? Where it would be something like this. If he was centralized, then maybe, you could do something like this. And I guess this is where the chariots are going to come in. I do not like this chariot unit. Playing with it, and people are going to tell you and tell me, it does so much damage, it has so much threat range, and I completely agree with that, but it is a pain in the ass because it's leadership 6, and it can panic by taking 3 wounds from shooting. It's only toughness 4, so it is like a stiff breeze away from just being panicked off the board. So it just, and it's kind of clunky with all the like, it's a little clunky if people like run up on it, right? It can't get away at an arc that easily. So if you run up something like here that can take the charge, whether it's you force a clip or something, if you can just accept the charge or run up, run here, it's like it can't do it's so bad at getting charged that like anything beats it, right? Like 5 fast cav can almost beat it, assuming they're not like super shitty fast cav. Can almost beat it. It has a little bit because it has 5 attacks per model, but it's not that easy. And so that became like a very clear problem of like people would run up on it where I couldn't charge them effectively, and it could be my fault, but then like if they're too close to my lines, I don't know, it just never felt good to have. I didn't love them. They kind of sucked in all my matches, right? It sucked. They did nothing in my first game. They did nothing in my last game. They killed like a Chaffee and then fled. They killed some Bestigors and died. And then in one of my losses. And in the game with the Dark Elves, they just kind of got shot and then ran away and did nothing. Like, the unit was never... Maybe the zoning it did was better than I give credit for. It just felt really bad at the leadership. So I could see... so it's 315 points. I had a discuss, I had a video where I talked about, what can you get for 315 points in Orcs? You can get 15 Iron Orcs, you can get a Giant, you can get 24 Nashers, you can get this unit. Those are the main 4, or you can get the Boar Boys. So I don't want any more Boar Boys, so that ain't happening. So the options become like Giant, which I kind of took it away for a reason. It can be independent. 15 Iron Orcs. They have their own problems too. Like they're really good on paper, and maybe I need to spam more of them, but sometimes they just get run up on. And because they can't flee and they're not fast, if you don't position them correctly, it can be really bad, right? Because let's just say they 15 Iron Orcs lose to some monsters. They're actually fairly good versus monsters, but like, or just a unit like a fast cav bust that's just gonna kill all of them before they attack. If somebody runs up on you and just says, "I'm gonna be," let's assume, I don't know, this is the Iron Orc unit, and they just run up on you and say, "I'm gonna stand like here." 11, 13 inches away to where you need a 9. Whoever far. They just can't get away. And you kind of have to sacrifice them at that point. They do good damage, and they do... Things I like about them is they don't need the generals. They don't need the general. So, the argument would be, if I drop this for Black Orcs, I don't need... My scoring gets better. This army does have a scoring issue, in my opinion. And I don't need my general anymore. Or I don't need my general for them. So those are like some arguments for the Black Orcs. And they work well with these guys because we roll 1s and the army becomes a little slower, but maybe that's a problem because the threat ranges becomes a little slower because you could even say, if you drop the chariots and you drop the shield breaker guy that I didn't like, this is 2 Iron Orc units right here. And yeah, it is. But you lose a 9-inch charger and a 7-inch charger. And you just get these infantry units that are kind of slow, and this army doesn't have a lot of range damage besides the magic, so are you just going to get outranged and then it kind of looks funny? So one idea could be, you can take 2 Orc Chariots. They're 290 for 2. If you compare them to Wolf Chariots, of course, on the charge, Wolf Chariots are going to do more. There's 3, they're faster, they cause impact hits, more impact hits. But Orc Chariots have the benefit of, 1, they're single models, so... I mean, these are light troops, but, being a single model, I can fit easier between things. Their leadership 7 on their own with BSB is better than 6 rerollable. They don't take panic checks from all the goblins. They don't take panic checks from the goblins dying or the chaff dying. And they don't take panics from taking wounds. So, and they're harder to kill, obviously. And they still, they combo really well. Like, a lot of times when these charge in, they're only getting 1 or 2 because of, if we're combo charging with anything. So, when it comes to, this unit, Orc Chariot works way better because it clips and is just stronger than trying to fit 3 huge chariots in. So, I don't hate this unit. I think I want to try, Orc Chariots instead. I could see Orc Chariots instead. In fact, I could see and That still doesn't fix the scoring problem of this army because it only has 3 scoring. I lost a lot of scenarios with this army, and that could just be a case of what I played against. Playing against very aggressive. Well, the game I lost, I was clearly going to lose the scenario because I lost. If I would have won the game, I would have won the scenario. That sounds stupid, but that's the way the game went. It was bloody, and like either I was going to like table him or half table him, or I was going to get heavily tabled. I tied one objective. Maybe I didn't lose that major. I just lost the flags one, which is army. Adding the orc unit doesn't make me any better in flags. So, but his scoring was a giant Myrmidon unit, which just fucks my army, and 2 imp units is just sat in the back. So I guess that was always going to be hard to get that scenario. So maybe it was a bad example of maybe I'd be fine in scenarios even with this scoring. I mean, Vince took 2 scoring and won a bunch of games at ETC. I could see dropping this unit because if you drop this unit for like 2 chariots, it definitely opens up not needing my general to be near this unit because the orc ones are a little more self-sufficient. Also, if you fail, if they do fail panic, it's 145 points. It's not 315. And as I said, there's a lot less ways to panic them. They don't panic from any of the spiders. I can stand an orc chariot next to a spider, and if the spider gets shot, the orc chariot doesn't panic. In fact, this unit doesn't. The only thing that causes panic to orcs are these things, which are not as likely to cause panics. And they're like little seeker missiles because the riders are strengths. If you really want to talk about, damage-wise, this coming in does, 3d6 plus 3 impact hits versus 2d6 plus 2. So you're getting 4 extra strength 5 impact hits. But you have 4 riders that are strength 7 versus riders that are strength 4, and you have boars that are strength 5 versus you know what I mean? Like it's more compact, more damage. You can go snipe characters easier. I do think orc chariots, for how I play and how I want to play, are probably better, more bang for my buck than this. I do think orc chariots are really nice, especially probably in the new coming meta of Dark Elves, where just having impact hits for cheap is really nice, and if they survive, they survive. Being toughness 5 is nice. They're not enough. Like I said, this army has a lot of things that, if this was 2 chariots, you kind of, you have a lot of single models, a lot of potential for cool things to happen. Now, you could then drop this guy, and then you could get more magic, I guess. It just kind of feels bad, I feel like, to have more magic. I mean, I'm making this up on the fly. You could drop one of the idols. You don't have to have 2 idols. You could run a bunch of chariots for that. This could be Nashers. Nashers can be a little bit more independent, mainly because they don't panic. And sure, they can lose combat and break steadfast, and that'd be annoying. But at least versus like a shooting army, you don't have to turn 1, keep them in range. That was the biggest thing. Try fitting this army where you're like, okay, these guys don't want to panic. These guys need to be somewhere in the middle. These guys don't want to frenzy. And these guys don't want to panic too. So it'd be a lot of times you'd look something like this, where, you want to make sure you get the middle guy in case 2 die, and you want to make, and then you got to fit this in behind you, and you kind of want this here, and you got to put your fast cav somewhere if you don't go first, and your spiders are going, if this was orc chariots, you can kind of just slot in between. They can be on the flank and not give a fuck. These 2 pair well together because this gives him reroll 1s, which is really important when, for whiffing purposes, because all your boars, all your riders are strength 5. So if you're hitting like an infantry unit, a lot more potential. Also, these can use breath weapons while the damn 3-man unit can't, which is another nice thing. If they charge in by themselves, now you're getting the breath weapon, which works well with him. And another reason why Thalm is so good with this list is because the breath works with his reroll 1s. You have a lot of single models. Like, if I was going to go down this route without changing a lot, let's just copy this army just so I don't mess up my other one. I could see, man, I have 60 points here. Let's just see what happens if I do this. And if I do this, oh no, new recruit, don't do this to me, new recruit. I have to refresh. It keeps changing. All right, let's see if I drop this unit. And then let's add some orc chariots. Special. As you can see, I still do not use shooting. Maybe one day I should add shooting in, but I just like doing this. And then this should probably be common orcs with 9. So you kind of have this, and then this guy should definitely be shield. Alchemist Alloy. And honestly, as weird as it sounds, like, so you can drop the paired weapons. And so you're going to go hand weapon. Let's just see how much it is. He's 295, so you do save points. You could even go lance this weapon if you wanted, just to wound a little easier on some things. But this is not a bad build. I like I said, I'd prefer to just have the damn armor save. And maybe even go, like, how many points does he have left? He has a lot of points left. Like, go Lucky Charm. Oh, you can't go both. Oh, you're going to go this then. Yeah. Like, this is not a bad build for him. I don't know what else you can really take. I mean, you could take MR1 if you wanted on something. No one can take MR2 because, yeah, I don't have the points for it. I mean, it depends on if things change. Like, if something opened up points-wise, I could see taking MR2 on the heroes because you have the points for it. On, I don't know who would take it. He can't take it. He can take something, right? What can he take? Is he maxed on artifacts? No, he could take something if he wanted. I guess you could take MR2. I mean, it depends, right? Dragon Staff is kind of interesting because it's like, I don't love Dragon Staff, but maybe if, like I said, if Dark Elves become more popular, it's also good for, like, potential shaft clearing. You could, walk up, Vanguard, breath weapon something. It's okay in combat. It's 30 points. Like, it's kind of cute in its own right. Not saying it's perfect, but I kind of like this build better. Little less offense, but you're not getting fucked by, if you play demons, having the 1-up save against Myrmidons or something is just better. Having the 1-up save period is just better. Just accept that you lost 1 strength 4 attack. And you're a little worse. You're a little worse fighting, I'll admit, but it fits and you don't die as easily. I have 35 points left. I mean, let's just take a look. Like, if you had this build, and let's just say we don't know what points are changing for any arm, but let's just say the command changed. We talk about the whole command changes happening, right? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This would be min core. I'd have 60 points, 60, 70, 80 points. I'd have another 80 points plus 35 is 100 and I could add a whole nother chaff unit to this army if I wanted. I could almost add a boar chariot. If you messed with some items, you might be able to fit in another boar chariot, If you said, all right, well, I'm going to, like, I could see a world, and I'd probably have to test it, but I could see a world where, like, this build is just fine. Give him a lance, strength 6 on the charge. This is the guy that does the damage and kills the heroes. This is just and if you really want to be cute, you could drop the Troll Ale Flask and give it to this guy because he's a better fighter. Or you can just say, I'm going to be annoying. Because the Troll Ale Flask is, like, enough. It's combat res, like, he's 1-up save. He's strength 6 on the charge. He's annoying enough to just be, to go in there and help. And if those command changes happen, like we said, right? 1, 2, 6. I would need 5 points. I would just drop the shields here. Like, this list is just like the list I was taking, except I have 3 board chariots instead of 3. Now, this can happen anyway if this stuff changes in the new update. Yeah, probably something like, assuming the new changes don't happen, we don't know about the new changes, I would do something like this and then add points somewhere. Like, you can make this 30, even though it feels a little bad to have. I always say it feels bad to have overcore, but there's not really much you can add otherwise, in my opinion. Or if you don't want to go that route, you could add another Goblin Raider unit. You could add a Snotling unit just to be annoying. I've said I don't love Snotlings, but they're probably okay to be annoying enough. And here, you could drop this guy for a mage if you wanted. This could be a magic setup I like. and I want to consider trying, especially depending on how the new, if the lore's change would be, you know, drop this, take Skull Fetish. Also, if I could find a way to fit in Binding Scroll, would be nice. But I would require it would require points changing more. Like maybe you drop Troll Ale Flask and just have a super cheap guy for 240, one up save 240, and then take Binding Scroll and just accept that this guy is like a chaff piece at that point. He's chaff. He's a mobile chaff. It's probably actually worth it. It's probably like a pretty good deal to do. To drop, like right now, if you drop this for Binding Scroll, actually, if you drop this. Anyway, there's some cheap things you can do. You can even say, okay, fuck Dragonfire Gem. Like Lash is fine. Hide him versus Lash. He's the only, well, it's probably keep it because Lash is the best. He's the best one to get lashed in your army, so you might as well just be protected versus it. But we'll see. Oh yeah, if you were going to drop him, I could see. Oh, it's already 45 minutes. I'm waiting for my wife to wake up so we can go eat. I'm hungry. Story of my life. Being hungry. You can go whatever lore you want. Probably witchcraft, right? So you could go something like this, where now you have a lot of channels. And if somehow, I guess in the current state, you can't fit the other chariot in, but just even in this list itself, right? You have a lot of single models, if you want. Actually, something I did. I'll show you a list I played. Do I have it saved? I just have a lot of this list. This is a list I played versus New Dark Elves, and it was that exact character setup I just showed you. It took Min Core, which is 5 Fanatics. It took 3 Board Chariots. It dropped a Great Green Idol essentially for an Iron Orc unit for the scoring. I don't even know if that's worth it. Honestly, like it's kind of was I was getting back with the other list if this became the chief that I had, right? I had that keep job goblin spider. So this could be a spider or it could be a mage, depending on how you felt. You could still have this core, and you could take this and say, all right, my scoring's going to be this, this, and this. And if you drop this, right, we're kind of getting back to the list I had before. If you were to drop this, and the magic and this item, because that's all it would take. Yeah, you could do the list I had before, where it had 3 chariots, 2 idols, Ed Bashers, and Fanatics. Because your core, you wouldn't have to take the savages in your list at that point, and you would just have a lot of single models and fast things, and your scoring would kind of suck, but you would just have to accept it. I don't know. I know people love Iron Orcs, and I guess if you take more magic, I think it works better with more magic, like Shamanism and Thom, like the French list that does like double master. That might feel better because you have, but the way I play with like the super fast characters and very aggressive idols, maybe these guys will just get left behind. And sure, they're good for some scenarios, but they also cause a lot of issues in my game. So, I kind of like the list I was looking at. Was it this one? Yeah, because I was fucking with my stuff. I spelled Gauntlet wrong, for anyone wondering. That's okay. I don't keep my lists for very long. Like, I don't sit with them for at champions. So, like, this was my core setup. But then you have, right, so let's just get to the list I was looking at before. And it would be, let's actually get to where I was. Oh, I need the Spider Hero. Again, I don't know what points are changing. So, who knows if this will be a viable build. And there are a lot of viable things I want to try. This is just changing my current list to be a little more up to date, I guess. This guy right here. You could fit a Binding Scroll if you had the points, which actually would probably be pretty fucking good in this list. Huh. Oh, it doesn't fit right now because I need... Oh, no, it does fit because this wouldn't be Skull Fetish. This would be... This has to be Heirloom in this list. So you're looking at this army. Very nice list, actually. Very nice list, in my opinion. This is pretty sweet. This would be something I'd try. I think this guy, you lost some fighting power, but you gained just being like he's like another redirector. He's another single model. He's a little more expendable. Um, yeah, I do like this army. This army is pretty sweet, I'd say. This could also go back to being the other thing. But then if let's just say we know the updates are going to be the champion thing, right? You're gaining 60 points and 70 points in core at this point, but you have to spend it. Well, luckily you have 5 points extra. If nets go down to 1 point, you could have all nets. And so now you're running 2 units with nets. And so these goblin units can start minusing the strength of the enemy, which in turn helps chariots, helps Ed Bashers, helps idol. Well, it doesn't really help idols. Helps all your heroes just because I don't know. Just being less strength is good because it's also less combat res against the cave goblins, right? If you 10 spear attacks or 15 spear attacks, all of a sudden instead of 7 wounds, they're getting 5 wounds. It's almost like plus 1 or 2 res potentially. You could also, well, it's just that there's no other commentary about that. You could just run. You could just run nets. Like if I gained 20 points here and I gained 70 points here, this would just become nets. This 20 points would probably add I'd probably have 20 points. I'd probably just add how many points is another model? 24? Not enough. I'd probably add a standard just to have more res in the army somewhere. Just nice to have the res, and then that's it. There you go. That's a pretty nice list. Obviously, 30 points for the plus the auto hit is very nice, but I think I can get around without it. Problem is the guy that had it didn't get to use it that much because he died a lot. So it's probably better on this guy. But keeping him cheap, there's nothing wrong here. There's nothing wrong with keeping it cheap. If you can, if you take a different list down here, if you choose to not take the boar chariot, and you could go a snotling unit, and you can go binding scroll. That's not a bad either. You get another chaff piece. Which is pretty good. It's actually a pretty good chaff piece when you want to go aggro because it vanguards, it scouts. Being scouting is also really annoying for some people. Like you have to worry about where they put their like war machines and stuff because you don't want like sometimes the snotlings can just scout and get there. I could see this being a pretty good list too. Actually, special grotlings, I guess is what they're actually called. And then you could add a binding scroll, which is actually very good when you have big monsters and this like hero because you can like if you do face div and you feel like it's very good against you, that one turn you need to not get killed. If you want to bring your warlord out, you can binding scroll down daring strike, roll your dice at the other one, and it'd be good. Like I don't know, this list is pretty good too. Yeah, this list is pretty good as well. And the changes could be just the same, right? If this changes, you could add a command here, and you can add stuff here. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if the idols could go up because they're kind of cheap. So if they go up, then it kind of messes with everything. But you have a little bit of room with the grotlings and stuff to kind of make decisions. You could drop this. Like you don't need this. This is like a good base where you have about 100 points extra, depending if you want the binding scroll or not. And this guy could be a mage if you wanted. And I think that's tough for me. On paper, I will always say that Forest Goblin King looks better. Especially I like this one a lot better. I just looking at this build, I just love it a lot more than the 315 point fucking non-magical. Oh, I hated that guy. He can stand in front of a lot of things. He's a one-up. Like he's just there. He just can do some shit. And he's cheap. The guy above him is better. There's no doubt in my mind. The Duskward Jai is just better. And he's 105 points more, so he should be better. But this guy is not bad. And he also gives you something like just on the flank, just being annoying. He adds a lot of res, takes challenges for people. Man, this list is pretty good. I like it. I kind of like, what I like. I don't know if I would take the chariot or not. I think the chariot binding scroll thing is very interesting. Anyway, and this core is interesting too. I don't know if it should be orcs or not. But, hey, if you want a fun list, it's kind of based off the one I was playing. This is kind of a good way to go. Either add grotlings or drop the binding scroll for another chariot. Man, that one's pretty good, too. Let's drop the binding scroll. Because fuck it. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like this army. Not gonna lie, I like this army. 5 points left. Not really anything to buy for 5. Um, I guess you could go Lucky Charm if you could find yourself 5 points. Like maybe Lucky Charm is better than Lance. You could go Light Lance, or you can drop the shields here. That's pretty good too. Anyway, that's here nor there. That's little things. Uh, yeah, there you go, guys. And that's the review of my Gauntlet army and why I liked and why I didn't like units. And I guess my final commentary is going to be Orcs, unlike Warriors, and I use Warriors a lot because that's the other army I play, when you sub something in, it can create a very big ripple effect to how the army is played. 3 Feldrax versus 6 Knights versus a Chosen Chariot versus whatever. It doesn't change that much. They don't need the general. They don't interact with the magic amazingly. You don't need them to hide units so much, hide models. So it's kind of like whatever. It's which one's best for the job. They can all go in portals. Blah 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 blah. They fight things. Here, you kind of heard the dynamic of why I like models and why situations I like them and why I don't like them. I feel like if I'm going to buy I love the 18-inch BSB because how wide the army plays. I don't like the Wolf Chariots because on paper they're amazing and they should do the job and they're not bad. But I want, maybe Orc Chariots are better because of the panic issues and because you kind of fit the gaps of like fitting, it's a lot easier to fit this chariot, if you're here to fit it in this area and say, okay, well, that's a bad example. I can charge through the gap, then 3 chariots sitting behind, it takes up, 3 chairs needs its own space. 2 chairs, this chariot can sit here and be annoying in of its right. And like I said, all the other reasons why of panics and fears, and that's another big thing with fucking Wolf Chariots. You charge into something, you charge out of your general's range, it causes fear, you fail the fear check, and now you can't overrun because you failed fear and you're shaken, or you can't pursue anything. It's not as good as clipping things. It's actually very hard to clip things with the Wolf Chariots because they're so wide. I'm rambling about the Wolf Chariots. They just really annoyed me in this particular build. Again, the Boar Boys, I like them less, but they need them for the Omen guy. But when I don't have the Omen guy, they actually kind of come to life again because you can put them on the flank. And you got to worry about leadership and frenzy. And the new list I showed you had 1 frenzy model. It was my general. I didn't have to worry about... I still have to worry about leadership because I don't want everything panicking. But at the same sense, if you think... I'm going to go rant again. What needed my leadership here? I needed these 2 for panics and this one for frenzy. That was the main things. And maybe this needed stuff. In the new build, or the build I was displaying, the Orc Chariots don't need it as much because they don't panic. They don't take as many panic checks. They still need it for break checks and stuff, but that's a little easier. This would be a Goblin unit, which still needs it for panic, but it's probably fine because you're probably going to relentless it up pretty early. They release Fanatics, and then if I want to get into really potential issues, then you get into scoring issues because now my scoring is 2 Fanatic units, which you can't really just throw away, and a bunker unit of boars. So you kind of have to smash everything with the rest of your army and hope that something survives. Like, you're not crushing scenarios. Like, that's probably where you have to be really good at winning scenarios. But I've talked to a lot of Orc players, very good Orc players. And they talked about how, like, you only need 2 or 3 scoring. 3 scoring is enough. Like, and it's not like amazing scoring. It's like a Goblin unit, an Orc unit, and like a Boar unit. And you're like, well, you gotta play well. It sounds stupid, but you got to play the army well, and it doesn't dominate in the scoring like Warriors kind of did. But if it plays well, it's very satisfying to play Orcs. I really enjoy it. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this video of rambling about my army and what I think, and hopefully the update comes out soon and I get to experiment with new Orc stuff. I don't have the biggest hope for Orcs themselves as far as big changes. I think Orcs are in a very good place they're a very strong book. They have good internal balance. You got to be a good player to get a lot out of them. But at they're just kind of like almost like the whole like the balance point of armies, where they're just like, all right, orcs are kind of there. So while I don't expect my lists or orcs to get such big shakeups, like maybe like an elder going up a lot of points could be, I think the meta around the orcs are where they could potentially thrive, and because they have so many. The new Dark Elves, for example. I mean, I just keep going, but I think my wife is still asleep, so it doesn't matter. Uh, the Dark Elves, very good fighty army. Could potentially be a counter for warriors because of, warriors have to fight you, and if the army is faster and better at fighting, then you just die, right? Combat elves are very good versus warriors. But orcs have options, right? Orcs, okay, I can add in some more chariots for more impact hits. I can add in one-up save cowboys, which they might have trouble with, and I can put in 5 fanatics and say, fuck you. I'm going to just land fanatics on you, and I'm going to change my master to pyro, which I don't need to. I think the Thalm is better in this case, but that's an example. If something else became very popular, if a lot of, fanatics kind of answer a lot of the elf issues potentially, but, I have access to pyro, which I heard could be getting changes, and witchcraft, which could be getting changes. So they can kind of take advantage of some of those other changes potentially, or what else is there? I was going somewhere with this, and now I'm kind of lost. I was just saying that they have a lot of options to not only change. They can change their armies for the meta. So what might change orcs is not their inherent points changes, but everything changing around them. And maybe Doomdivers are good now, but maybe trolls become really good because for some reason, whatever becomes popular, all these things get nerfed, and now I don't know. You guys know what I'm saying, I hope, at least a little bit. Where if the meta shifts, I think the orc book is strong enough; it has enough options to shift with it, and that'll be more the excitement than did my Great Green Idol go up 10 points? Because I think in isolation, the orc book is not going to be that dramatic. What's going to be dramatic is everything else. Does vampires rise up in power, though they're already powerful, and then that causes issues? Do Terrorgeist be taken a lot more, which might fuck orcs or something? Do snipes go down in value, where in case maybe orcs become better, because my army in particular right now is not very good against snipes. But if snipes become worse, people aren't taking, Touch the Reaper and Evo as much, maybe that helps me out indirectly, or I have to take things to kind of account for that. Anyway, that's kind of the commentary there. So, when the changes come out, I'll be sure to have a video not only about orcs, but about everything that changed.